Very good. It's my pleasure to continue this presentation after the introduction by Mauricio. He managed to introduce a number of aspects that I will try to develop a little bit further. And my fair ambition for today's session is to at least share with you a few breadcrumbs that you can get on how we plan to work with you so that we can find a joint journey of cooperation, putting all the pieces together. It's very many things. I will try to be as clear as possible during the next 25 to 30 minutes. And of course, you have our contacts and our webpage, as Mauricio was commenting, where we are delivering all we produce. So stay tuned, because there will be more and more detailed information coming. I would like to start, if it works. I'm fighting with I have a technical problem. Now it works. The flow I propose for the next half an hour is to remind a little bit more on the motivation for having these validation platforms. I think that the three projects assigned by the Commission to work on this platform concept have taken a different interpretation, so I'll try to explain where we put the focus on 5G first. After that, we will dedicate a rather long session to what type of 5G services and innovation will be available for you. And finally, and this is super important, I will dig into how the actual technical collaboration with 5G project partners and you we propose to be, based on the experience we have with the verticals engaged in the project and with our former experience, and thinking on the tools we are creating for you. So it is these three aspects that I will cover: why, what, and how, looking more into the technical angle. Okay, let me remind that it is a reality, and this was addressed by the Commission, that we have a lot of innovation at the two sides of this question mark. On the digital part, the industry is in heavy digitalization all over the place, and a huge momentum in the creation of the fifth generation of mobile networks. And this is happening concurrently, and doesn't necessarily mean that it's connected processes. It actually takes a lot of effort, time, and talent to connect both. And the idea with the platforms is to create this middle layer that you can read here as European 5G validation platforms, acting as a meeting point between new applications that really demand 5G performance and the networks that are to be deployed in the next years. But applications need to really have an idea how to use it and qualify and quantify how it will work in terms of performance. They have to be sure, and we want to be sure that they run that process so that they can become commercial, and then all of us can have a good business towards the next years. We have emphasized in our interpretation of this in the 5G project that these platforms have to be open. We were just commenting that we have no restrictions to people coming to us, the more the better. We understand that we cannot propagate some complexity in our jargon and our technology to the users of the 5G technology, so easy to use is a must to remove a barrier of entry. It has to be trustworthy. One thing is to set up a network in 5 weeks or 5 days for a specific demo. Another thing is that we have to make conclusions to have a heavy industrial investment. So what you get from the network has to be quantified and qualified for taking a well-informed decision on the vertical side. And it has to be automated. It is not a good idea that we have to work in a high-touch fashion where we need to dedicate a number of engineers to work together for months or weeks. It is important that the tools allow to perform this test in a very automated way. So this leads to The simplest picture I can show about 5G is here. And if we look at these two worlds, the world of the verticals and the world of the networks, in the world of the verticals, we managed to have a good engagement with 6 verticals in transformation that were commented: Industry 4.0, Smart Tourism, Utilities, Media, Transport, and Smart Cities. So they are part of our charter. They are partners already feeding us with requirements to make the best possible platform. And we welcome, I'm experiencing some noise, but I think you can hear me fine, so I will continue. And we welcome more vertical sectors and more agents in these vertical sectors already in our project. In the bottom layer, we have the benefit of being able to evolve already established labs in 4 European countries: Spain, Greece, Italy, and France, with their own setups, with different vendors, with different, sometimes technologies. But what we want to achieve is this middle layer where an integrated portal can offer, regardless the site, the 5G services that vertical companies need for validating their products before launching them commercially. So this is a lot to say in a very simple slide, and it's why we have to run this project, and we will explain the timeline of how we are going to progress in this ambition. Please let me now get into the what. At least I think that it will give you a good idea to take a look at this diagram. For instance, in Turin, where we can see from the left to the right, we can see the verticals engaged in the project: Trenitalia, Transport and Smart City, Torino Municipality. This is complementary to other initiatives in the machine-to-machine and IoT space, of course, because 5G is super important about that. And it's also, you can also see in the mobile access vertical that there is a coexistence of technologies as in the real world, and all of them are actually offered to these companies validating their new services and products. This is unique because it is so difficult to set up your environment, and it is really a good economy of scale that you set up a strong environment in one place, in this case in Turin, and that people can come to Turin to do their validation tests. And then, a little bit more hidden to the right, we have the infrastructure supporting the experiments you are going to do, for hosting your services, for having the computing close to the access or as much as you need it, and all the testing environment to really provide you with the data to make well-informed decisions. So this is, in simple terms, like a 5G network, end-to-end 5G network, with additional tools for you to have a good feeling on how your product will perform in commercial networks. This is the example with Turin, and also available from the web page. You can have a look here more on the architectural side to the approach taken in France, where you can again see these infrastructure levels, platform level, and service levels. The idea is always to encapsulate all the complexity of the 5G network to users, but give you as much access to the technology as we can. If we take a look as well, of course I'm not mentioning here all the different technologies vendors in detail, and we and the site managers of each of the locations are available for you to provide more details, and in the web page you will have more. But I think it's important to have an idea, because location is super important of where you can get in each of the countries 5G has a footprint. In the case of Spain, the engaged verticals from the scratch are a manufacturer of AGVs, of autonomous vehicles, automated guided vehicles for industries, called ASTI. We work with the National Agency of Innovation in Tourism for the concept of augmented fair, and we have experiments in the roadmap for broadcast with 5G. These are three verticals. We hope to welcome many more through 5G IF project, and again we have provided availability to the latest radio access technology, well aligned with the actual reality of the standards and the deployments. And again, we have the support because radio and cloud come together in 5G, the support of 5G core orchestration, distributed cloud, edge computing. I would like to remark in this picture, and it's common to all the other sites, that they are interconnected. I will develop more on that, on secure channels. So this provides the possibility for you to run multi-site validation tests involving several locations. And finally, I would like to move to what we are planning for Greece, and it's already started. Here we have other tests on Industry 4.0, smart cities and utilities, a number of configuration of access technologies so that you can choose what better meets your needs. It's important to have the latest, also to have the more suitable technology for you. And again, the core network behind this supporting that users are getting. We users, big drones, robots, wherever devices can have their identity and can have the access to the internet and etc. The point of these four locations, and I want to stop a little bit here, is not that they run in parallel. The point is that we are closer to you in 4 countries, but we want to give you the same flavor of access in all these 4 sites. So something like, and I'm anticipating a little bit more on some aspects, something that you can get if you define your test strategy and a validation activity for being run in Spain, then you can actually change nothing and perform the same tests in France or in Italy or in Greece. And this is important for you to save a lot of money, to have sort of a standard and reusing your development and test software as well. So those were for the sites, but we have a common blueprint and actually a common approach. So it's like a real end-to-end facility all together. And I would like to put the angle here on, of course, you can see the box with the blue arrows. Of course, we are making accessible to you all the 5G technologies, from the access to the management, going through the transport, cloud, and core network. This can mean a lot to some of you, or this can be cryptic to some of you as well. The important thing is that we add to the possibility to touch this technology, the simplification of accessing it with a number of 5G innovations, 5G specific innovations that I'm listing here and explaining in detail later. The first one anticipated by Mauricio is intent-based APIs. The second one is on the interworking side, having a multi-domain slicing and orchestration. The third one, and it's super critical, is a coherent KPI framework where your systems KPIs, those making you take the decision to go or not go to the market, can be measured with trust, with credibility on our platform. And finally, we have a complement on openness to make sure that we are not sticking to proprietary solutions and that we can replace and play around with more software, more hardware technology as interchangeable modules. So both technologies and innovations, this is what we have in our plan for you. And I have to, okay, now the focus should be here, yes. And I want to start a little bit from the basics here and illustrate an important principle of our platform. If we take a look at the access, and I want to do that before we forget that access is super important, I'm saying that because we put a lot of emphasis in the slicing. Slicing is the key concept, actually, for you, users of 5G. Is where you specify the SLA of what you want and what you get from the network. But access plays a super important role in delivering the performance that you want to test for your product. So the concept here is that is the catalog type of thinking. If you want to, or if you think you need the performance required by offered by massive MIMO, multi-user MIMO, virtualization run, latency reduction, and all intelligent connectivity. If you want to do this, it's going to be super simple to you to find in our integrated portal in which location you can get that, so that you can figure out where your experiment can run and get the better conclusions. And we will keep updating this not only for these 5G features, but for all services that will be delivered by 5G Eve, including distributed cloud, orchestration, etc. The idea is that you have access to the technology as if in a catalog fashion. You can spot what you need and you can plan how to use it. That's for the technologies, and we could have and we will have similar slides for the services you will get with different types of slices, and that will be coming to our webpage very soon and public. Then if I move into the innovations that we are developing, and we hope some of them to influence in the standards to make your life simpler, there's 4 pillars I want to introduce here. The first one is a novel concept that we call intent-based interface. After a lot of time working with a number of companies, what we understand is that it takes a long time to understand each other. And it should be so ideal that you companies can express what you need, and we on the 5G side, we can make it possible how it should work. Today, this is a human interaction. What we plan to do is to automate this into a tool. So you can specify what type of slice you need at what hours for this test, so that you can check this or that. And this interface will have the magic to translate that into what has to be provision activated and start working in the validation platform. That's for simplifying any experiment to any company, more or less technological, more or less aware of 5G Eve, or 5G technology in general. Okay? Second point here is that a number of services are envisaged to involve different locations and even different operators. So we wrote that down when creating the proposal, and we have an important track of action on what we call multi-domain slicing and orchestration. If you want to have, because your experiment, your product requires validation involving several sites connected internally through the operator network or through the internet, then it is possible for you to make up your experiment, think of the systems you are going to deploy on each location, and make it work together and measure how it performs. Again, we try to do that in a fashion that can allow you to save a lot of time and just worry on what you need. And we will have a complete view of this framework very soon, and I will come to the timing later, but it will be available by mid of the project. A third and critical component is that you really get to know what is happening with your experiment, with your product, in a number of dimensions of performance. This is the advanced KPI framework that we are developing and putting together for you, and offered in a homogeneous way across all the sites of 5G Eve. In general, you can access only a partial information on how your system is working against a network. Actually, most times, you just can get to see if it works or if it doesn't work. And that's honestly not good for making a business decision. If you want to really have information to do it, you need to explore several angles, and we are providing the tools and the visualization for that, so that you can get an idea of how it's working. And four, as I commented before, we really support the possibility to use modules from different vendors and technologies, but be accessible through a same common framework, so that you can play on different combinations. There's a lot of innovation around this, and we don't want to stop it, we want to support it. Those are the four pillars that we believe make your life easier, that they have been contrasted with the verticals involved already in the project, and with some of you already approaching us for creating your proposal or your experiment. Now, that was for what we offer, and I think that it's an important point for the Q&A today. Please don't hesitate to ask anything about what we are offering and when. Now I would like to develop a little bit more on the human aspect, on the technical collaboration. And again, we have these two worlds, the 5G technology world and the vertical industries. And it is a fact that we have to understand each other. And how we propose to do this, because this process can take, and it is our experience, 3 to 6 months, how we can understand each other to really do what's worth and saving time and getting the best results for validation, is to select from the catalog of KPIs that we are developing from you, those that really matter and those that are interesting but are not a must for your system, so that we create these spider webs that actually drive all the process of validation and create the configuration of the network for your experiment. After this is done, we have a common language, and we can really have an idea from our side on the network and from your side on the service that this is really working or this needs an improvement. Additionally, it gives you the insight on where you can use heavily deployed technology, maybe less sophisticated, and where you badly need new 5G technology so that you can have your plan for that. This is super important. It's a process we have already run with engaged verticals in 5G in the last 3 months, and it's a way to really create an industrial validation of your platform. That's why we are dedicating time to now opening the dialogue and delivering you with the tools to do it. When it comes to the deployment, execution, and analysis of the trials, we propose this cycle of 4 stages for you. Let's start with the top right angle. What you can do for your product, because you think you demand 5G performance, is to simply go to a portal, browse, and look up the services you may need to compose the network slice you need for your experiment. It should be as simple as that. Of course, you will need the user equipment, maybe the modems. You have to think very well about the location, as Mauricio anticipated, but you can really configure the puzzle of the network at the level and the language you use from the port. Then, the definition and the deployment, the planning of the experimentation service is where the intent-based interface comes into picture. Ideally, you express what you need as an SLA, and by doing that, all the processes are triggered in the orchestration layer to make it possible that the components will be active for your experiment. Then it's where the actual industrial validation starts, and you will have the tools to continuously monitor and maintain the experiment. It can be a 2-hour experiment or it can be a 3-week experiment, depending on what you want to test. And finally, monitoring is fine, but intelligence is better. Our tools are aiming at providing you with insight of what is happening, why, so that you can iterate on the next validation test and start the cycle, because the lab is open to do that in an agile fashion. You can run several tests And this cycle will help you get to the point where you get the competitive aspect you want in your product, or you find that there is a risk in the technology and then you decide to put on hold something. It's both interesting learnings for your technology and business plans. I want to remind that, again, it's not about what you can do in a specific 5G if location, but what you can do in general. If in your business, for the product you are thinking, if there's the aspect of multiple locations, please come and work with us, because you can have the possibility to run the same experiment involving several sites. And for this, we have created something like a maturity or complexity model, where we can start to work from you as sometimes is done today in bilateral agreements. We make sure that your applications, your logic, your system are pre-provisioned, and then you just launch it. Much better and more complex is that you can get the same common interface in the different locations. Then the third point, the third level of ambition is that your control in the application can benefit from the interworking, and the extreme complexity and benefit, we believe, is that the whole data plane can be shared between different locations. And this, of course, depends on your business need and the cost that you can afford thinking on your deployments and the business plan you can have. So all these 4 levels will be available in this path to creating a real interworked end-to-end platform at 5G. Let me go, and I will spend some time here on the logic of timing in our platform. I want to really make it clear that there's 2 super important milestones in our project. First of them is May 2019. In that moment, if you remember, I was talking about technology and innovations. Most of the technology relevant for the access, the core, and the orchestration will be available to the participant verticals in our project. It will be high-touch, semi-high-touch experience, but they will be able to start this first round of tests in dashed lines. And this is where we learn in 5G to create the best platform for you. We have time and effort allocated to this. With all this experience and with the finalized development of these 4 innovations to be available for the first time, we come to the big milestone of the project in January 2020 or December 2019, if you like, where we have the full tested release with virtually all the services I have been describing on both the technology and innovation sides. So if we look at the bottom lines here of ICT 17 and ICT 19, I can take that example. Now you're probably working on your proposal or your experiment. We welcome ICT 19 proposers and any other company. So you can finish this work. Please engage with us if you want to get a better support. We'll be glad to do it. And if you get started your project maybe in May 2019, then a necessary stage of cooperation, technical collaboration between teams for the specification and planning of your test may take 3 to 6 months or may take less. But the important thing, I think, to you is that you can count on starting your tests with all the services and simplification we are proposing by January 2020. You could have a contact with the platform before, but I think that is the critical moment where you can really industrialize your validation test. Not only for deploying what you need and executing, but also for getting a good analysis of what is happening with your trial. So this is the master plan for us. We want to support as many projects as possible, and things take time. We have to have a good alignment with both the standards and the commercial rollout so that we are not taking you too early to type of technology that will come later, but not too late either. That's how we plan for this. As you can see, testbed upgrades every 6 months. This takes a lot of effort and coordination, but it will have backward compatibility. So the test you are defining, you can rerun in the next cycle of 6 months if that is necessary for your project, or if you're waiting to have a more advanced feature coming from the standards and the pre-commercial or even commercial systems. So that was my 25 minutes, almost 30 minutes, on the technical aspects, where I wanted to give the breadcrumbs for creating a journey, an idea of what we do. More details coming in our 5G EVE webpage, and I want to really thank you for your attention and for to some of you who are already contacting us, which is great. So, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Manuel, for this concise presentation. It triggered a couple of questions, and I will give them to you one by one in the order that they came in. Okay, let's start with Jose. Jose is asking, as SME that provides 5G core, is it possible for us to use EVE to test our core with GNB?
It's a possibility. I want to stress that what we want is to create or to grow the 5G ecosystem, not only on the technology side. We welcome collaborators and competitors, but we especially welcome vertical tests, because that's the assignment we have been given. If that aspect that they want to improve in their core development comes with an application with a concrete industry, it is much better, because then we think that is the right experiment to do. So this is not, and I want to be a little bit more clear, this is not a platform for us, the Ericsson, Nokias and companies, to test what we do. That we do it internally. This is a platform for helping vertical sectors to develop and validate their 5G ready applications. But we welcome all type of tests. We are open to any type of test.
Yeah, there are some follow-up questions by Jose related, I think at least the first one, to the same subject. We are located in Helsinki, so according to Manuel, would it be possible to set up VPN with GNB in the proper EVE location with our site for testing?
Mauricio on the management side of the project, and I will do it on the technical side. We have to be very clear that this is an environment where the validation platforms have a location. The access aspects are really critical. It is very expensive to create each of these 4 locations, and what we do is welcoming you to come and work with us, especially for the access aspects that you want to test. Then there's combinations of things, as Mauricio was also anticipating, where you can have, yes, setups where you can connect your environment with your access to our core, because that is part of what you need to test for validating your product, and we welcome that. There's the situation of course, the costs involved, and like that, we prefer to help you as much as possible in our labs, so that you can get not only the execution, but also the analysis of what is happening, with a guarantee that it is how it will work in a commercial network. Then if we do some, mixed tests, we have to sit and talk and define them properly, so that you get the best service from our platform.
Thank you for this answer, Manuel. And as a third question from Jose again, does EVE include terminals with 5G modems so we can measure E2E latency, including delays from UE run backhaul?
Yes, it does. If you take a look at the web page, you will see this as one of the points under analysis, just because we want to work with several companies, several technology providers of this. Unless we can help you with the user equipment, it will be difficult for you, at least in the next year, to run your experiments. So it is user equipment, modems, yes, routers. We will have it in our lab, and it doesn't mean that we can have 200 but we can have enough for your for instance, critical latency tests, and then you can have the emulators for having a more broad test on performance. But of course, this is part of the facilities.
Now here comes a question that is not from Jose, and it is from John Power. He's asking, we are building our own 5G lab, in brackets, radio access, MEC, VEPC core in Ireland. Can we connect this to EVE in one of the 4 countries?
That we need to discuss, to be clear. It's a project in itself to do so, and there has to be a good motivation to connect this. Again, I want to remark that this is about validating a product. So if you want to test something that requires interworking between 2 sites, please use our sites. You can run tests involving and with the effect of the distance and technologies in the middle between Madrid and Paris, for instance. Then you can use that directly, as we do in our industry. We have our test only in 3 locations in the world, and we have 25 R&D centers. This is the model we believe that it's more effective and that we can support better. Then, in general, again, we are not and we cannot really help in remote deployments. That is something that creates, it's another world. You have to go to your operators, get the plans of your regulator, make sure that you comply with that. We do that for the locations where we are. We cannot do it for others. When it comes to core and core cooperation, then again, I would really have to have an offline discussion with the people asking this and figure out why that is needed, so that we can plan it in the most efficient way.
Thank you, Manuel, for that answer, and of course also for that question, because the question on the locality of the facilities that can be connected, I think that has also come up earlier also in Brussels. So I think it's a generic question that could be interesting for a couple of projects. Here comes another question. This one is from Angel Martin from Vicomtech. He's asking, is it possible to connect an existing RAN and UEs, brackets not part of 5G EVE, to 5G EVE infrastructure to be distributed, delivered, switched by 5G EVE to 5G EVE RAN UEs? That's the first part of the question, and there are a couple of follow-up questions. Or is it mandatory to have the can't read that, parameters? Okay, UEs physically located at the RAN 5G EVE. In other words, is it possible to federate other ENBs to the 5G EVE infrastructure?
Yes, I think this is the recurrent point. What I can explain is how we work now and how we plan to work with an example, if you like. We work with a company in 5G EVE project called ASTI. What they manufacture is vehicles that self-guide in factory environments for delivering things from one place to another in a large factory. And each of these sort of cars are maybe half a ton, so they're heavy equipment. We could have 2 approaches for this. That in this factory of ASTI, actually like 300 kilometers from Madrid, we go and deploy 5G. Or we could take the other approach. We have sufficient equipment of this company in our lab in Madrid so that they can perform very complete tests with a lot of analysis with our tools on our location. And you can guess that we went for the second approach. It's much better to be in the place where you have all the tools available, and then you can get to know if that will work for your product, because you will deploy that product later on in many different locations where you would like to have the same performance, or you can assess the type of performance you will need based on the test that you have done at 5G. I'm insisting on this because this is the spirit of the project, that in our labs we can support many people. If we take the opposite approach that we try to take 5G technology to your lab, it will always be a very partial environment, and it will not deliver you with the full functionality of our validation platform. And it will demand a lot of effort on, so to say, the connection of things rather than the execution of the validation test. I think that we have a clear priority on the test of vertical cases that can be taken to our labs in 4 important countries of the European Union. And then that's for the validation, and then for the demonstration, we will have some sort of support services for taking the possibility to do your demonstration for maybe 2-3 days to specific locations where again the frequencies are available, the operators are supporting you, the regulator is fine with that. But that to me it's not a validation, it's just a demonstration of what you have achieved in 5G location at a closer point where you have your factory, your first potential customer, etc. That's another story. I think that for the real validation, we have to really recommend, and we believe it's the right approach, that you come to our lab, that you send your equipment to our lab. And of course, you can do a lot of work, planning, deployment, monitoring, you can do remotely. But the actual equipment has to be where there is the location of the access in our trial sites.
All right, I just see there's, I think, a related question from Angel Martin. In the case the UEs are on one 5G Eve site, is 5G Eve funding the logistics related to host them, or the researchers need also to move physically to run the tests?
Okay, good question. I see 2 angles in the question. The first one is on the availability of user equipment. In 5G, you know that is a broad world. It's not like there's no such thing as a 5G smartphone for everything, but there's a lot of devices that you may need for your purpose. If you are doing something with drones, you need a super light equipment. If you are doing something for a robot, then you need another thing, and so on. So we will try to have the necessary equipment for getting trustable conclusions on your experiment, on your validation test in each site. And then because we want to simplify your work, certain things you can do remotely and do not involve a lot of person effort to support your test in our sites. But we are open to discuss that model, because sometimes it's just putting on and off in an equipment and see what happens for 2 hours. We are glad to support there. If it's a more heavy, experiment on stability or other things, and you need supervision, video supervision of what is happening, things like that, I can guess now. Of course, I think the proposer should be involved and come to our location for that period. But we are open to that model.
There's another question related to the financial aspects from Puria from I2CAT. The question is, as a follow-up question to the last question, I'm not quite sure to which one that's referring, but anyway, does the 5G Eve project foresee any financial support to integrate new potential facilities, verticals into the Eve project already, or into the Eve already existing?
So this is, I guess, a question to myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and
clear. Yes. No, I understand the question because I2CAT participated in previous projects where there were open calls really devoted to fund new infrastructure. But this is not the case. So 5G Eve will have a very small call of tenders, but they will be oriented toward SMEs or technological startups, just for ideas. So as soon as we have some results, some available material to show, we will have this small call public call for SMEs where we'll ask bright idea, especially in terms of exploitation. How can we use in the market specific solution, specific tools? So the answer, is not there is not a budget dedicated to new infrastructure. But as I said, in case of selected proposals, so new proposal from the ICT 19 tender, this could be included in the budget, but there is not some financial resource directly available from 5G.
Thank you, Maurizio, for that clear answer. There's another question. This one is from Bayhan. He's saying, hi, in test site cities, how many base stations are available regarding mobility applications? I guess that one is more for Manuel, I guess.
In general, I think you can hear me now. In general, we are actually making public what we have in each site as we are coming to the deliverables of the project. So I don't want to anticipate here information that is being cooked as we speak, but I remind that the 5G.eu page is open and all deliverables from the project are public. Then again, in the integrated portal that we will offer to you, you may browse, look up what you need and what type of equipment you have at each place. That is also coming in the next months. So I don't want to anticipate, but you can guess that in each of the sites we have some type of outdoor and indoor coverage with more or less broad areas. But we are doing, we are updating this, and actually I want to remind that what you can see in our webpage today is our best plan for May 2019. It's only that, okay, so say. And we will update with the plan for the big release of December 2019, and then subsequently for every 6 months.
Thank you, Manuel, for that answer. There's another question by Luis Christofi asking, do you have any plans to support ICT-19 projects 1 year after the end of the 5G project? Will you be able, there's another question, will you be able to support release 17?
So this is Maurizio. Thank you, Luis, for the question. So no, we don't have plans for this because, of course, most of the facilities will remain in the different location under the management of each partner. So it means that we don't have any, let's say, commitment or statement to have activity not, let's say, not under the present contract. So regarding the use of our facility after the end of our project, that is in July 2021, is important that the proposer of the ICT-19 project try to have agreement from the specific partners that are covering a certain area. So this will not be, let's say, it's not a general commitment. It should be a specific commitment to partners clearly stated in the new proposal to the European Commission.
Thank you, Maurizio, for that answer. And
let me comment, Milon, a little bit more on this.
Manuel, please continue.
Today, most of the facilities we are already supporting release 14 and some aspects of 15 that comes already in 2019, and our plan is to be in line with the 16, of course. Then, in the time frame, and we don't have a crystal ball for everything, to the end of the project, maybe we can support this type of companies with more advanced technologies, for instance, with our lab in Shista. But this is too soon to comment now. I think that it's good to stick to the recommendation of Mauricio.
All right, I hope that answers your question, and yeah, I think that's something in the future which also relates to the exploitation plans of 5G Eve. There is another question again from Jose, who had a couple of questions in the beginning. In the facilities description, it indicates VEPC and non-standalone solution. Are there any plans for 5G core and standalone?
Yes, again, I want to stress that what you can see in our webpage and what I have presented today is for the most immediate milestone in our time frame, for May 2019. We prefer to do so because then it's more reliable information. But we are going to have continuous updates every 6 months on the plans, and this is of course a possibility. Today we prefer to help you plan with what we want to do and what is achievable, and manage the expectations on what we are doing. But it is part of what can come in the update of the plan and with the deliverables of the planning of the project. Yes.